Today is Monday, February 8th. We're covering some of the most talked about moments from Super Bowl 55 on and off the field, and what to expect later this week as preps continue for the historic impeachment trial. Plus, how every NFL stadium could soon become a COVID-19 vaccine megacenter, where Americans are dealing with sub-zero temperatures, and a newly discovered lizard that could fit on your fingertip. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. We start today with America's biggest sporting event of the year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are this year's Super Bowl champions. They defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9 last night, nabbing their first Super Bowl win since 2003. And for star quarterback Tom Brady, this was his 10th Super Bowl appearance and 7th win, the most of any player in NFL history. Though it was his first win with the Bucs. Brady threw 3 touchdown passes during the game. 2 of them were caught by his former Patriots teammate Rob Gronkowski. The whole thing was pretty unexpected, too. Even though the Bucs were the first ever team to play the Super Bowl at their home stadium, they were actually considered underdogs going into the big game. By the way, the Bucs will have their star QB for at least one more season. After the Super Bowl, Brady said he would return next season, and when he does, he'll be 44 years old, making him one of the oldest players in the league. It's also worth noting, at 68 years old, Bucs coach Bruce Arians is the oldest NFL head coach to win a Super Bowl. Usually, there would be a big parade to congratulate the winners, but so far, nothing is planned this year. Last week, Tampa's mayor said she didn't want to plan a celebration ahead of time because she didn't want to jinx it. But already there are reports of fans flooding the streets of Tampa Bay to celebrate last night. And if you pay attention only for the Super Bowl performances, well, there was plenty to see this year. From Miley Cyrus and her surprise guests like Billy Idol performing for a live audience of healthcare workers, to the inaugural poet Amanda Gorman reading a new poem about pandemic heroes. And of course, the halftime show featuring Grammy-winning singer The Weeknd. He started in the stands for the first time ever and then moved on to the field later in the performance. He used plenty of pyrotechnics, lights, and background dancers. As far as commercials go, the average 30-second ad cost $5.5 million, and they featured some pretty big-name celebrities like Will Ferrell, Michael B. Jordan, Amy Schumer, Serena Williams, and many more. The next big story of the week will be happening on Capitol Hill. We are just one more day away from former President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial, and the 2 top senators still haven't decided exactly how this trial is going to go. For example, we still don't know if there will be witnesses, we don't know how long each side will get to present their case, but senators from both sides of the aisle are saying they do not expect it to last any longer than a week. Trump's first trial last year lasted 21 days, and at the time, that was the shortest presidential impeachment trial in history. But there's quite a bit different this time around. That first trial had to do with foreign policy and a pretty complicated storyline. This time, we're talking about one impeachment article. It basically says President Trump's words provoked a mob to storm the U.S. Capitol last month, and lawmakers are at least familiar with what happened that day because they were there. And of course, this time, and for the first time ever, the Senate is holding a trial for a former president. Last week, Democrats asked the former president to testify himself, but Trump's legal team almost immediately shot down that idea. So that's even more reason to believe this will be a short trial. Remember, at least 17 Republicans would need to join all 50 Democrats to convict Trump. Stay tuned. Myanmar is seeing some of the largest protests in its history. For the last 2 days in a row, tens of thousands of protesters filled the streets of the country's largest city, Yangon. The crowds are rallying against a coup. Remember, the military there overthrew the government last week, and the country's elected leaders were detained. The military claimed there was fraud in the last election, though didn't give any evidence to support that claim. Now the military's commander-in-chief has taken control of the government and replaced the cabinet with former generals. Protests over the weekend were largely peaceful. As Reuters reports, they were the biggest protests since 2007, and they happened despite a weekend internet shutdown. Protests are getting support from around the world right now. For example, United Nations leaders and Pope Francis said they stand with the people of Myanmar, demanding justice and democracy. To be continued. The newer COVID-19 strain that shut down much of the UK is spreading quickly across the United States. A new report found that more contagious strain is doubling here in the U.S. every 10 days. A group of scientists looked at 500,000 coronavirus tests to come up with that statement. The study has not been peer-reviewed yet, but it does back up what the CDC has said about the UK strain. The CDC predicted it will be the dominant strain in the U.S. by next month. Now, this version of COVID-19 is at least 40% more contagious than the original one, and scientists say it might be more deadly, although that part is less certain at this point. Either way, it puts a new urgency on vaccines. Infectious disease experts say the shots on the market should work against this strain as well. So far, the CDC reports more than 9% of the American population has received at least one dose, and about 1.4 million shots are going out every day. All right, we have much more news coming up, but first, a quick break to thank our sponsor, Native. Native aluminum-free deodorant is a great addition to your 2021 routine. Native cares about what you put on your armpits. That's why their deodorant's ingredients list includes things you've actually heard of, like coconut oil and shea butter. Plus, they have options. Native has a line of sensitive deodorants for people with baking soda sensitivities, plastic-free deodorants if you're trying to cut down on your plastic consumption, and even an unscented option if you're all about your natural scent. I personally love a bunch of their scents, including some of my go-tos, coconut and vanilla, and lavender and rose. But there's always something new to try with rotating seasonal scents. Plus, it's risk-free to try. Every product from Native comes with free shipping within the U.S., plus free 30-day returns and exchanges. Make the switch to Native today by going to nativedeo.com/newsworthy or use the promo code newsworthy at checkout and get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/newsworthy or use promo code newsworthy at checkout for 20% off your first order. Okay, now back to the news. More vaccine megasites are popping up all over the country. For example, Yankee Stadium in New York City opened its doors Friday, and it'll reportedly be able to handle 15,000 vaccination appointments in its first week alone. And on the other end of the country, another megasite is set to open in California this week. This one will be in Levi's Stadium, which is where the San Francisco 49ers play. And more may be coming. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell offered up all 32 of the league's football stadiums that could be transformed into megasites. And President Biden says his administration will take the NFL up on that offer. Speaking of the NFL, Aaron Rodgers has now won his third NFL Most Valuable Player award. No, he did not play in the Super Bowl. He's the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. But this still did not come as a big surprise. Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns last season and only 5 interceptions. And he led the Packers to the NFC title game before falling to Tom Brady and the Bucs. Rodgers says winning the MVP was, quote, really special. He's now one of only 6 players to win it at least 3 times. The others include Brett Favre, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. And speaking of Manning, over the weekend, he was officially selected for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Manning is an Indianapolis Colts icon and one of the game's most recognized stars. Millions of Americans who live in the upper Midwest and Plains are dealing with the coldest weather they've experienced so far this season. In Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota, people are seeing actual temperatures in the 20s below zero, and the wind chills are even lower than that. In fact, the National Weather Service has issued advisories saying the wind chills could be dangerous in those areas, as well as in cities like Chicago, Illinois, Omaha, Nebraska, and Des Moines, Iowa. Meanwhile, people on the East Coast are now digging out of the second big snowstorm in just about a week. Snowfall was reported from Georgia to Maine yesterday, and while this one was not quite as intense as the storm that brought up to 36 inches of snow to some places last week, it still had an impact. Parts of Kentucky saw nearly 10 inches of snow, New York City got another 8 inches, and Washington, D.C. saw at least 2. That said, AccuWeather forecasts show the next snowstorm could be coming to the Midwest and parts of the Northeast as soon as tonight. Scientists say they may have discovered the smallest reptiles on Earth. They're mini chameleons that are so small they can fit on your fingertip. An expedition team found 2 of them, a male and a female, in northern Madagascar, and they look just like a lizard, except miniature. In fact, one of the lizards is only about half an inch long. Scientists are still looking for more of these tiny reptiles so they can study them further, but they say they're pretty hard to spot. Not only are they super small, but they're also camouflaged and move really slowly. That said, if or when scientists can track down more, they might be able to confirm these are, in fact, the smallest reptile species on Earth. And that's it for your main news today, but now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, this episode is made possible thanks to our sponsor, MunkPak. MunkPak makes snacks that taste like our favorite sugary treats, but with 1 gram of sugar or less. In fact, MunkPak Keto Granola Bars are one of the best granola bars I've ever had, and yet contain just 2 grams of net carbs and are only 140 calories. They're great for anyone following a keto lifestyle, of course, but also a perfect snack for anyone just trying to cut back on sugar and carbs without sacrificing taste. I really enjoy flavors like coconut cocoa chip as a great grab-and-go snack between calls during the workday. Try it for yourself and you'll see. And we have a special deal for our listeners. Get 20% off your first purchase of any Munk Pack product by visiting monkpack.com and entering our code newsworthy at checkout. And Munk Pack is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll exchange the product or refund your money, whichever you prefer. To get started, go to monkpack.com. That's monkpack.com and select any product. Then enter the code newsworthy at checkout to save 20% off your purchase. Okay, now back to Money Monday. Today's story is about a controversial way some businesses are trying to make up for lost profits during the pandemic. The Washington Post reports there are some extra fees here and there, and they range from, say, a $5 disinfection charge in a hair salon to a $1,200 fee for extra food and cleaning in a senior living center. These fees seem to be popping up from dentist offices to restaurants and more. And sometimes they let you know about it, and sometimes they're kept a bit more hidden. So now there are questions about whether or not some are even legal. Data from the Washington Post says more than 500 consumer complaints have been filed in 29 different states all about these fees. And some states are cracking down. For example, in Michigan, the Attorney General actually sent a cease and desist letter to senior facilities that were charging so-called COVID-19 fees. That said, there are a lot of voices advocating for these extra surcharges as well, saying they help businesses cover the extra costs of dealing with the virus and they need them to stay in business. Either way, financial experts say it's something you might want to ask about before you plan to spend money somewhere, and you can always ask for an itemized bill so you know exactly what you're paying for. All right, thank you so much for listening today and making the newsworthy part of your daily routine. We'll be back with much more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.